Okay, everyone. First, in a number of period reviews. All right, they're very comprehensive. Some of the stuff we went over in detail, some of the stuff we went over just a little bit, some of the stuff we didn't really go over but was in your reading. Might even be a couple new things in here. But all right, these go by the College Board's key concepts, the things that the College Board says you're going to know. So, how you'll see this happen is that I'm going to talk a little bit about the key concepts, then I'm going to go into details, that sheet, specific historical evidence that hopefully will help you not only write your essays, but recognize things when we're looking at the multiple choice. So here we go. All right, so the first key concept says, as native population migrates and settles across the vast expanse of North America over time, they develop distinct and complex societies by adapting to and transforming their diverse environments. Okay, so the Native Americans had very diverse societies based on their diverse environments. All right, so let's take a look at what some things are here. All right, the spread of maize cultivation from present-day Mexico north into present-day American Southwest and beyond supported economic development, settlement, advanced irrigation, and social diversification among societies. So what does that mean? What do we need to know about that? Well, first of all, we got to know the Three Sisters farming, right? We talked about this way back in September. Corns, beans, and squash. Corn gives you the starch, beans give you the protein, squash gives you the vitamins, all right? The most important part of the Three Sisters farming is it allows for a food surplus, which increases population, frees up people to be more than just farmers, all right? They don't just have to farm to survive, they can do other things. Artisans, soldiers, priests, kings, etc., etc., etc. And you need to have this type of farming, this type of ability to grow food to progress above the hunter-gatherer level, which people are going to. All right, we're going to see that in the Aztecs and the Mayans with their pyramid building, the Mississippi Valley. Native Americans are going to build mounds, the Cahokia people, the Pueblo cultures are going to build the caves in the hillside um, dwellings in the American Southwest. All right. Things are going to be different in the Great Basin and the grasslands of the Great Plains, right? The introduction of the horse is going to allow Plains Indians especially to become better warriors, raiders, and hunters. Remember, the horse is not native to North America. It's part of the Columbian Exchange. It's what came over with the Europeans. All right, the Comanche and Sioux are going to exert control over large territories as a result of their mastering the use of the horse. All right, it's also going to make bison hunting easier. It's going to make it more profitable is the wrong word, but more available, and it's going to increase the food and the supplies of the Native American tribes in the grasslands of the Great Plains. All right, again, Northeast and Mississippi River Valley are going to be different. All right, Three Sisters farming is going to allow more permanent settlements in the Mississippi River Valley, but as we look at the eastern woodland tribes of the Northeast, it's more going to be the hunting, gathering, and fishing. All right, the colder climates are going to make shorter, less productive growing seasons. The Three Sisters farming isn't going to be as effective. Therefore, they're going to have a different society based on their different environment. All right, that's what's really important here. All right, however, we are going to have food surpluses, which are going to allow for permanent villages and leaders. We'll talk about Powhatan as we move on. We're going to talk about different councils. We're going to talk about the Iroquois Confederacy, which is going to be super important after the Europeans land. All right. Northwest, present day California are going to be different yet again. All right. They're going to be hunting and gathering societies. We're going to have a number of societies that are going to be supported by the ocean. All right. They could find plenty of food from hunting and gathering. It wasn't a problem to find that. All right. But the tribes are going to remain small in California because they're going to have no problem finding what they need, but they're not going to have this large surplus that the Three Sisters farming is going to give them. All right. The Pacific Northwest is going to have a tremendous abundance from fishing mainly. All right, so they're going to have larger tribes and larger populations due to the abundance of fish and the ability to use the ocean to help them. All right, obviously contact among Europeans and Native Americans and African. We're going to get the Columbian Exchange, and we're going to get changes on both sides of the ocean, and that's really the key. All right, so Europeans nations are going to have a drive to conquer the New World, basically in search of wealth. It's a competition and the desire to spread Christianity. It's basically that God, glory, and gold that we've talked about 1,000 times throughout your education. All right, so to begin with, remember this is just a little background. The Mediterranean trade networks are dominated by the Arabs and Italy. So Portugal's looking for a way to break into this, so they start to move around the African coast. All right, Spain is going to complete the Reconquista, which is driving the Muslims out of Spain, and begin their Inquisition, the attacks on non-Catholics. They're also going to support a crazy guy named Christopher Columbus in this weird desire to sail west to find the Orient. All right, they are also desperate to get into these trade networks. They can't get in the Mediterranean because it's controlled by the Arabs and Italy. They can't go around Africa because the ports around Africa are controlled by the Portuguese. All right, they need a way in. All right, Columbus obviously discovers, quote unquote, the New World and unleashes a slew of explorers into the New World. All right, we're going to have Portugal briefly getting very rich because of slaves, gold, ivory, trade with India, all the stuff they're going to get, which is going to cause other countries to want to challenge them. All right, Cortez and Pizarro are going to have significant successes in the New World. Cortez over the Aztecs, Incas over the Pizarro, and we're going to get that drive to copy this success. All right, and because of that, Spain, and specifically Philip II of Spain, is going to develop the Spanish Armada in order to prevent competition in the New World. They know they got a good thing in the New World. All right, they want to prevent competition. Obviously, that's not going to be successful in the long run. All right, Columbian exchange is super important. We get new crops to Europe from the Americas. All right, it's going to stimulate European population growth. All right, we're going to see a shift from feudalism to capitalism. That's going to be part of this. It was already starting to happen anyway. All right, but corn and potatoes cause the European population to explode. All right, leads to increased migration, leads to colonization, leads to imperialism. We're also going to get this influx of gold and silver, right? That's going to create surplus to allow the development of capitalism in Europe, and we're going to have a global trading network. It's a really complicated concept. We get into it a lot in European history. All right, but we really get the first global money supply since the Roman Empire. All right, it's really the beginning of globalization, which is something we still talk about today. All right. One of the ways that this is going to happen is through improved technology. Portuguese are going to develop the caravel, which is a ship that uses triangular sails. Big part of that is allows them to tack into the wind. In other words, they can actually sail into the wind. They're now not at the mercy of the wind as much anymore. They're going to adopt the astrolabe from the Muslim Empire so they can better measure latitude and things like that. They're going to develop the compass from China. All right, all these things are going to aid in their exploration. The development of cash crops as we move into the New World, like sugar later on, tobacco and cotton, are going to even explode this idea of her exploration trade even more. All right, African slave trade, which we'll talk about a lot in the future, is going to provide capital and labor. We're going to get the granting monopolies in England, which is going to give companies an incentive to continue to try to trade, continue to try to explore. And then the next step is the creation of those joint stock companies. It decreases the risk for individuals. They can pool their money and is going to allow the beginnings of colonizations, both successful and unsuccessful. We're going to get Jamestown, Plymouth, New Amsterdam, Boston. Those are obviously successful. We're also going to get Roanoke, which is not so successful. All right, so contact among Europeans, Native Americans, and Africans is going to result in a lot of changes. All right, Spanish exploration and conquest of the Americas was accomplished and furthered by widespread deadly epidemics. That's important. Disease, by far the number one most important factor that allows Cortez and Pizarro to conquer the Aztec and the Incan empires, which were really, really strong empires without the fortunate for the Spanish, very unfortunate for the Native American spread of smallpox. They don't win either of those wars. All right, 90% of natives are going to die from smallpox, a number that's almost hard to even comprehend. All right, we're going to have horses and large dogs, which are going to be brought in to use as weapons against Native Americans. European weeds are going to infest Native American fields, which is going to make agriculture more difficult for the Native American survivors. All right, cattle are going to be brought in by the Spanish over time. It's going to destroy native vegetation. All right, we're going to see a drop in the bison population. All right, these are the negatives of Columbian exchange. All right, a lot of bad things as far as disease and plants and things that are not native kind of taking over. We still see this kind of today when we get, for example, the mussels that are infesting the Mississippi River right now and spreading in non-native species. All right, the encomienda system is something that we do need to know about. All right, it's a way to marshal Native American labor. All right, basically, it's trying to um, replace feudalism. If you remember that from World History of Humanities last year. All right, the Spanish on the top, forcing the Native Americans to basically be the peasants, to grow crops, tend animals, all that stuff in service of the Spanish lords. All right, the Native Americans are also going to be used as a labor force in the mines, and that is going to start to create some issues, which we'll talk about here in a second. All right, encomienda system is also used by Father Serra to construct a chain of missions all the way up the California coast to attempt to convert Native Americans to Christianity. All right, really controversial guy right now. He's in the process of being named a saint by the Catholic Church. He's been beatified, step right before becoming a saint. All right, a number of Native Americans very upset about that, saying that he ripped children away from their families to try to force them to assimilate into the Spanish culture, to assimilate into Christianity, to take away their religion and their culture, and they're saying that he should not be a saint. So a very modern controversy over a very ancient idea. All right. We're also going to get the West African groups that are going to practice slavery to help the Europeans to extract slave labor from the Americans. All right. The Spanish are going to use slaves both in plantation, just like the English will, but also a lot in mining. All right. The Portuguese are going to replace the Arabs in the slave trade, who are then going to be replaced by the Dutch and finally the English. The West Africans. Some West Africans are obviously going to capture Africans to sell them to the Europeans. We're going to see widespread devastation of cultures and kingdoms in Africa. Some of the devastation that we see is still evident in Africa today due to the slave trade. Native Americans proved to be susceptible to disease. Obviously, hadn't had the contact with the Europeans, so things like smallpox are going to affect them in great numbers. All right, Spain then is going to shift to Africans, who for the most part were immune to the European and tropical diseases. They had the immunity from them. They had contact with the Europeans in the past. All right. De las Casas, who we talked about a lot, was big in protecting the Native American cultures. Felt the Native Americans were a special culture and wanted to be protection. Spoke out against the way that they were being treated. Spoke out against using Native Americans as slaves. Unfortunately, his idea is to use African slaves instead. So whereas sometimes Las Casas goes down there as this great defender of the Native Americans, eh. All right. Yeah, he defended the Native Americans. However, I wouldn't call him a great defender of equality in general, obviously. All right, we're going to get the casta system, basically the Spanish caste system. If you remember the caste system from India, I think you learned about last year in world history or humanities. We're going to get these labeled categories on the top. We're going to get the Spaniards, pure Spaniards, born in Spain. After that, we're going to get the Creoles, which are Spaniards that were born in the Americas. The Mestizos, which are Spanish and Native American combination. The Mulattoes, which are the European and African combination. The Zombos, which are the African and Native American competition. Then the Native Americans, then the enslaved Africans. A very strict caste system. By the way, if I pronounced any of those wrong, sue me. I'm doing my best. All right. Catholicism is required in the Spanish areas, all right, as well as the Spanish language. You needed to learn to speak the Spanish language. All right. We're going to see Europeans and Native Americans are going to have very different worldview. All right, religions different, gender roles are different, families different, land use is different. All right, so let's talk about some specifics here. All right, obviously there were some mutual misunderstandings. Columbus thinks the Native Americans are Indians. All right, obviously he's not in India. Native Americans don't really understand the concept of owning the land. The land is there to share. Now they had territories, but no individual person owned land. So therefore, when they sold the land, they didn't think they were selling it permanently. They thought they were basically getting something in return for allowing the Europeans to use the land. Obviously, the Europeans had this idea of ownership of land. So basically, it's my land, get the heck out. All right. That's going to cause obviously significant issues. All right. The Europeans are going to adopt Three Sisters farming. All right. It's going to allow them to stay alive. It's going to be essential to the early development of the colonies. All right. Native Americans are going to adopt European technology. We're going to have knives, pots, weapons. They're going to adopt the use of the horse. They're going to adopt the use of a number of European ideas. And the Native Americans often learn the European languages. Many of them converted to Christianity, especially in the Spanish Empire, and not all of that, obviously, by choice. All right. This is going to cause many conflicts, diplomatic negotiations, and military resistance. Let's look at the next slide. The Aztecs are going to resist Cortez and the Spanish. First, they're going to try to bribe them to go away. Then they're going to fight against them. They're going to have some success until obviously disease starts to wear them down. Basically the same idea with the Incas against Pizarro and Cortez and the Aztecs. Powhatan is going to adopt John Smith, kind of bring him under his ideas. We've talked a lot about the whole Pocahontas legend with John Smith and John Rolfe and all that stuff. We are going to see sneak attacks. Opunakawa, I'm sure I didn't pronounce that right again. Doing my best, sue me. Arranged a sneak attack on Jamestown in the English in 1622. Almost wipes out Jamestown. All right, he'll come back later. We're going to get Squanto, who's a Native American, who's going to join the Pilgrims. He's going to see that as a way to preserve his own power, to try to bring them into kind of his alliance. Native Americans are going to take advantage of the idea that Europeans love furs. They love a lot of the trade goods the Native Americans can provide. All right, we're going to have the Iroquois Confederacy, which is going to be really important for 100 years. And basically, they're going to get really good at playing the French and the British off against each other. They'll be French allies, mainly, all right, but they'll join the British at times. And basically, they want the French and British to fight and leave them alone. All right. We get this question how we should treat non-Europeans, this whole idea of race and racism, and how do we treat other people, and is it okay to subjugate Africans and subjugate Native Americans, and how does it matter if they convert to your religion, and all that stuff is going to be really, really complicated during this time. All right, Columbus is basically going to try to use the model of African slavery. He's going to seize Native Americans, he's going to enslave them, treat them very terribly. The Spanish are going to try to forcibly assimilate Native Americans and Catholicism, basically convert or die. The French Jesuits, however, are going to do it a little bit different. We talked about that, the difference between the French and the Spanish and the English and the way they treated Native Americans. All right, the French are going to attempt to get them to convert mainly by choice. All right, much more friendly, much more as an alliance instead of this idea of convert or die. All right, Las Casas is going to demand that Native Americans are Christian since many of them were converting to Christianity. Therefore, they shouldn't be slaves. Again, he advocates switching to African slavery. That's it for this session of review for your final. Period 2 coming soon.